Hi, my name's Katie Moody, and I'm going to be presenting my final paper for mass communications theory, and it's going to be titled Finding Common Ground. We're going to use a uses and gratifications approach to engage citizen journalists. So for my paper, I'm looking at the rise in participatory culture, which indicates that media users, especially younger users, prefer channels where they can interact with organizations and other individuals. And this is particularly important because at the same time, traditional media outlets are facing a challenge in where they're losing audiences to new media channels. So they're trying to figure out ways to gain those audiences back and at the same time gain advertising dollars related to those media users. But in order to get those advertising dollars, they first need to have an audience that the advertisers want to advertise to. So as this trend continues, it encourages research related to the uses and gratifications theory to understand media users' motivations in seeking out information online and through user-generated content, which we will explore later in this paper. And in this study, researchers will propose a survey for understanding the gratifications that younger media users receive from seeking out information online and their motivations for participating in the creation of user-generated content. Traditional media outlets could use this information to create a space where media users can contribute to the news generation process without taking away from the product value. Because a lot of times that's the challenge too with traditional media outlets and allowing users to come in and create content alongside professionals is that they're worried about losing product value when they do that. So since the turn of the 21st century, traditional news outlets have struggled to adapt to multiple waves of digital disruption, which began in the mid-1990s with the introduction of the internet. A study out of the University of North Carolina by Penelope Abernathy, it presents research showing a decline in traditional news outlets since 2004. It actually shows that more than a quarter of newspapers from across the country have disappeared since 2004. And research from Winter and Alpar in 2017 show that over time, media users have become accustomed to having access to news and information anywhere, anytime, mostly for free. And I think people my age can really relate to that because we're used to having access to that information on our phones whenever we want to. If we want to Google something, we just pull out our phone and look it up. So further research from Shao 2008 and Domingo and colleagues, also 2008, and Holton and colleagues show that users have gravitated towards user-generated media content sites to seek out this information because it's just easy to access, it provides control and a level of interactivity for users. And this goes on to my theory that's going to be the theoretical framework for this study and its uses and gratifications, which was developed, it's going to be based originally on the theory proposed by Katz and colleagues in 1973, which it's the theory that provides that there are many needs that media users are seeking to fulfill when utilizing media, but they actually shifted their focus of uses and gratifications away from a passive audience in their study and towards an active audience because the audience had more control over what they were seeking out in 1973, I guess, than McQuail's research in 1972. And then Sundar and Lamperos came in and expanded on this research in 2013 to include the gratifications that users receive from utilizing new media. So their research showed that digital media provides a new space for audience participation in media. Which brings me to participatory culture, which related to user-generated content. User-generated content allows media users to create, share, and engage with content in an online format, providing for new gratifications. It shows that younger media users are more likely to engage with user-generated content than traditional media outlets. In fact, one study actually showed that Generation Z is more likely to use user-generated content than traditional media at all. And then younger media users receive certain gratifications from utilizing user-generated content related to control, mobility, and social inclusion, because if they know that their friends are on TikTok and everybody's talking about this TikTok video and they haven't seen it, then they're going to feel socially excluded because they weren't participating in that type of media. And then citizen journalism is a subset of user-generated content, and that's where journalistic content is created by non-professional journalists. So that's when, say, Your neighborhood citizen posts about the city council and what they're doing on Facebook, and it's not technically held to the same professional standards that your local newspaper is held to, but it's still considered news from people who just generally don't know about it. So while traditional media outlets struggle to retain readers and audiences, they are also struggling to compete with these citizen journalists, because if a citizen journalist can't get this information out there quicker and more effectively than your local newspaper, then your local newspaper is going to lose readership because your readers already know this information. So, existing research effectively addresses the theory of uses and gratification, and that users receive different gratifications for utilizing different types of media, as well as showing their participation in user-generated content. It also shows a trend away from traditional media toward digital media, and it adequately describes the limitations of citizen journalism. But existing research is limited in showing that the gratifications that users receive from participating in the creation and distribution of news utilizing user-generated content, and what gratifications they might receive from seeking out news and information online. So Winter and Alpar in 2017 show that the trend of media usage has shifted away from traditional media towards digital media. And then Flavian and Guerreri highlight overlaying gratifications for users who are seeking out traditional forms of media and digital media. And then Proprotnik indicates that there's an age divide among audiences who utilize digital and traditional media, which points to different gratifications that users receive from certain types of media. And then Serempinko and colleagues show the development of new media technologies contributed to the decline in traditional media outlets, and that younger media users are more likely to utilize digital media to seek out news and information. And for these reasons is why I'm going to focus my study on younger news users, to see what gratifications they receive for sharing news and information in an online format, specifically through user-generated content. And then Shao discovered that the ease to create content contributes to the gratifications users receive from participating in user-generated content. So basically, the easier it is, the more likely they are to participate in creating it. And then Domingo and colleagues found that most newspapers still maintain most control over content creation. And then Holton and colleagues shows that content creation by individuals who are not professional journalists are driven by gratifications related to social inclusion. For my method, I will use a survey approach to determine gratifications from UGC. And to begin capturing and retaining younger audiences, news outlets must determine where citizen journalists fit into the news creation process. And that it starts by determining why younger news consumers create UGC, and what part of the process of creating UGC makes younger news consumers more likely to participate in a platform for creating UGC. So, my first research question will be, what gratifications do younger news consumers, specifically millennials and Gen Z, receive from seeking out news and information through user-generated content sites? My second question will be, what motivations do millennials and Gen Z have for contributing to the news creation process utilizing user-generated content? A survey will be utilized to answer these questions. It will be distributed online to best reach young news consumers, specifically millennials and Gen Z. And a survey is the best tool for this research because past studies have shown that individuals are most likely to respond truthfully to a survey rather than an in-person interview due to interpersonal assumptions about news consumption. And so it will be sent via email to undergraduate and graduate students enrolled in classes at the College of Media and Communication here at Texas Tech University. And it will feature 10 questions about respondents' participation in user-generated content, along with an open-ended question about their motivations for engaging with UGC. In response to RQ1, I hypothesized that millennials and Gen Z receive gratifications related to control and timeliness for seeking out news and information using UGC. For RQ2, I hypothesized that millennials and Gen Z are motivated to engage in news and information through UGC, to be more involved in their community, and for social inclusion. For participatory culture, the implications of this research will allow traditional news outlets to see where media users are seeking out news and information utilizing user-generated content, and what motivates millennials and Gen Z to participate in user-generated content for news and information. And this research will allow media outlets to determine how to best engage media users and make content easily accessible for users to engage and create user-generated content for news and information. And then for uses and gratifications, allowing users to participate in their community and to feel like they have a place in the creation of news content will allow media users to receive new gratifications for seeking out news and information. And then by leveraging those gratifications, media outlets are more likely to gain input from media users and strengthen their overall media product. So that's my presentation, and thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you learned a little bit about uses and gratifications as it relates to participatory culture and traditional media outlets versus new media. And I hope you have a great summer and a great weekend. So thanks again.